Hey everybody, it's Rob from Man Sewing, and today's tutorial is awesome. I'm going to teach you all how to make this clever little trash bag and pincushion combo. And I have to admit, I was given one of these years ago and I absolutely use it constantly. I actually have them all over my studio. And there's a million different ways that you can make these. So I want to give you the basic steps, and then I'm going to encourage you to modify yours and add embellishments and some notion holders or whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to walk you through the basics of this. And there's three parts we're going to do today, okay? We are going to make the pincushion portion of this, okay? And this is filled with walnut shell, which is really cool. And then I'm also going to go ahead and show you how to do what I'm just going to call the hinge, or this is the part that hangs off the table for you, right? And then I'm also going to show you how to do the bag. And in the bag, I've also got this really cool little liner in there as well. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm using these great new prints that I just picked up. It's called Snippets, and it's from Wyndham Fabrics, and it's a really cute and very manly notions print, wouldn't you say? Maybe if it was like in black and gold or something. But you know, we wanted to do something that was cute and fun, and I love using sewing notions fabrics when I'm working on these kinds of things. So anyways, that's the Snippets from Wyndham for you. I bet you're ready to get started. I am pumped up about this one today. And it's going to be a couple of basic steps, right? So, working with our two fabrics, the fabric I use for my outer bag liner and the hinge are going to be the same. And so this little piece, I've got a rectangle here, and if I remember correctly, it's like 8 inches by 4.5 inches. And this one, it's buttoned, so the direction of the print doesn't really matter. And it's going to be real simple. We're going to basically take this bad boy and we're going to fold it over, and I'm going to stitch starting, because I'm going to want to turn this to the right sides back out, and I'm going to stitch around. And I actually just come across the top fold too, back down. And I've got one I've already made to show you here. So let me see if you can see that like that. And I'm trying to use a little bit of a darker thread so that it shows up nice on camera for you. Of course, if you're using white or cream colored fabrics, you want to use a nice neutral thread, but I'm using a little darker green so you can see it there. So once this bad boy has already been stitched around, we're simply going to put our fingers in there and start rolling it back out. I feel like I do this in all of my tutorials. I'm like the king of unfolding sandwich bags or something like that so far. So it's a good trick, good step to know. If you want crisp corners and you have like a purple thing handy or something, you could stick that in there. I probably have one back here in the Somando vest somewhere. Somando! Come on, there we go. Pop that in the corner there. Now, I'm not going to bother top stitching this because it's actually going to just get sandwiched into the pincushion portion. So all I'm going to do for a moment is just kind of tuck those under, give it a quick press, tuck, tuck, quick press, and that's all I need to do to make the hinge, okay? Okay, so after the hinge, part 2 is we're going to prepare the bag for the pincushion, but we're not filling it till the very, very end. Okay, keep your hinge handy because you're going to sew it in a moment. Sometimes you might accidentally forget, haha. Now, this piece here was a 7 inch by 8 inch, and it's the other fabric, the second piece. And this one has got the cool little thimbles and needles on it, but it is directional. So it's 8 inches tall, and I've already done the first portion for you. I've taken and folded over the raw edge, and I've stitched it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance because I want to make it real easy for myself. When I come to fill this, I want to have the finished edges so that once I have all the walnut shells in there, I can stitch it with a zipper foot on with a little more ease. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare to fold this. Okay, and I'm going to start here and sew around, but before I can do that, I need to think, that's right, I need to put my hinge in there. So I'm looking for where I left my raw edge. The raw edge, or the opening, is going to kind of get centered. And you know what? I really am just eyeballing this. But it's roughly 1.25 inches from either side. And now I'm going to fold that on the inside. You shouldn't be able to see your hinge at all. And that way when we turn this thing right sides out, the hinge will become exposed again. Let's backstitch on this corner because it's going to take some wear and tear. And I'm also feeling with my fingers right now to make sure that I have that hinge portion nicely secured and lined up. Drop my needle for my corner. And you know what? It looks like I went about a stitch too far, so I'm going to cheat in and then over. Easy. And let's backstitch on this corner even though it's a fold. Okay? So that's simple enough still too. Now I'm going to that nice finished edge opening. I'm going to pop this out. And with ease, let me get this tidied up before I show you how cool it looks. Okay, so there you now have the hinge and you have the pin cushion to be. I always forget to trim my threads until it's too late. So let's get these threads out of here right now, because later on, like I said, we're going to wish we had all of our fingers working for us. Okay, I'm a nitpicker today. There we go. Okay, so we've got that dialed in. Now we get to do the fun part. And if you actually have never done a purse or a bag of any kind, this is just a small version of that. So you can take these skills and you can take them and do other kinds of creative, larger projects, because I'm going to show you how to do box corners here in a second. All right, so it's going to be real easy. I'll do my best to go slow, but I've been drinking coffee all morning, of course. So for those parts, same thing. This one's going to be the liner, but we're going to make one of these out of the liner, and we're also going to make one of these out of the outer portion, which I used for the buttons, obviously. Now this piece here is a 9 by 16 inch piece of fabric, right? And I've done the exact same trick, but now it's 16 long, or 16 across the top of the thimbles. Remember, it's directional. And I fold it under. And this is going to be the top edge of the bag. So you are folding the top portion of your print down, because that is going to be used right here when we go ahead and we top stitch that all closed, right? Nice and easy. Okay, so for that, I'm going to bring this around. We're not going to sew the hinge in till later. We're going to make the bag first. So like I said, first step was that raw edge fold down. Second step is, again, 1/4 inch seam allowances all the way around. And then I'll teach you how to do those box corners. Okay, so I've done the stitching there too, right? So basically just from that top edge all the way down and around. And before we turn this one right sides out, I'm going to now grab it and pull it so that that seam is upright. And then I'm kind of poking in the corners a little bit. I'm taking this nice and slow. We're going to iron this into submission here in a minute. But I'm just kind of looking at the top and kind of letting these corners drop down. And it's kind of interesting. You'll get this feel for when it just falls into place and it lines up really nice. So I take it nice and slow. There. And most of the bag will line up across the top. This looks nice and sharp here. And once you've got that set up like that, then let's take it to the ironing board. Turn that around a little bit. We're going to hit that seam, or those ears right now. Okay, and at this point, I'm normally going to mark all of this here, right? I'm going to come down 6.5 inches from my top seam allowance. So let's drop my 6.5 inch ruler there like that. And I normally would chalk this, but as I turn around and I noticed earlier in the Somando vest, I have white chalk in my chalk pencil. You can put all different colors, but I happen to have white. So I'm going to do a little trick with a Sharpie. Yes, a Sharpie on white fabric. So I'm just going to take and make little teeny dots. This is going to be a stitch line for me, and with that stitch line I'm just going to run that through, and then I'm going to cut away the excess. This will not show up, I'm hoping. And then a dot, dot, dot. It's just a little visual, right? Just need to get across there. Okay, so I'm going to sew over those. Don't ask me how I know this trick. Make sure you're only sewing one side at a time, please. So I'm just folding under the other side. And that's going to go directly under my needle. Probably should back stitch. And I'll quickly do that to the other side. So when you're making the liner or the exterior of the bag, you do the exact same stuff and the exact same measurements and everything. You make two of these exactly the same, except for you're using different fabrics. So there's our stitch, and you notice I kept my ruler and my cutter handy, and I'm going to give myself what looks to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, you should be watching to make sure you're only doing one cut at a time, or cutting one side at a time. And this can be less than accurate if you like. Okay? So look at that. Now we have these awesome box corners, right? So this one here is the liner of the bag. So I'm going to leave it as it stands. Haha. As I was mentioning while I was sewing, what I want to do is I'm going to make this exact same bag as the outer portion, right? So just to remind you, all the math, all the measurements, the box corners, all of that is exactly the same so that they fit. So there's that liner here. And then here's the outer portion of the bag, right? And I've already made that outer portion of the bag for you. Now the outer portion of the bag is going to be right sides out. So I'm grabbing that now and turning it. And then what I'm doing is I'm putting my hand in here and I'm looking for where my seam allowance is. Because where that seam allowance is, I'm going to line that up with the seam allowance on the other side, or the inner liner. So now I'm grabbing, there's that seam allowance again, and I'm going to line those up. And I'm going to tuck them in. Now, at this point, if you were making a bag or a purse, you would be inserting handles and you'd be doing all kinds of different stuff, right? But for me, I need to put the boning in, and I also need to attach this portion of the bag as well. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. I can carefully slide this in and stitch it all at the last final second, or if I was nervous about that, I'm going to make it a little bit easier on myself, and I'm going to actually pull this liner back out now that I know it all fits nicely. I'm going to look for that seam allowance. I want that to be the part of the bag that hides against the table. And now I'm going to take this portion and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and line it up in here. And I'm going to go to my machine and I'm going to top stitch that in real quick. Okay? I'm using that folded edge as my guideline to make sure that the little hinge part lays in flat. And like I said, you could have done this at either step or either way, but I just want to do this now because it's going to make a little bit less cumbersome later. Okay, so that's now just stitched on there to the outer portion of the bag. Now I'm finding that same seam allowance again, and I'm dropping it inside as my liner. So that way when I look in the bag, I see the beautiful fabric. When I look on the outside of the bag, I see the beautiful fabric as well. Now, so that these aren't saggy, we need to insert some boning or something to make it rigid. I've heard of some really cool tricks. Now let me show you what the boning is. This is a it's a 1/2 inch wide boning, and I'm going to use 18 inches worth of this. So you'll need a 1/2 yard of boning. But there's something else that people use. You know those wild, it's like the black strapping that comes on cardboard boxes if you work near a warehouse or anything. If you know anybody that gets a lot of deliveries in an afternoon. Well, funny enough, those work great because it's a plastic and it's kind of spring loaded. I've heard about people using broken tape measures. Rumor has it you can use weed whacker cord. So there's all kinds of different ideas out there that people are using for the boning, but the boning is what makes it kind of spring loaded like this, right? So with that, I'm actually going to stitch down about 1 inch below, because this is 1/2 inch wide. I want plenty of room. So I'm basically going to bring this over to the machine like this. I am going to slide my presser foot in, and I actually have a 1 inch mark on the top end of my stitch plate. I tell you what I'm going to do, make it a little bit easier for you all to see. Let's mark this. Okay, so right back here on the edge of my machine is what I'm going to be looking at as my fabric flows through here, and that is going to give me 1 inch. And if you weren't sure, you can slide your boning up in here and make sure it's going to fit between that seam allowance and where we're going to top stitch. So I'm good in either direction. I'm excited about the way this is going to work and ready to rock and roll. Now I am pinching the top of the bag together so that the top of the bag looks really clean as I'm sewing through here. And I've got to use some pretty bad posture so I can see my blue marker once it comes underneath. There is a part where you're under the hinge where you're kind of blind. These make awesome gifts. Christmas, birthday, something you could put in a little bag. I've actually seen people present these with all kinds of notions and things filled inside of them. It's really cool, and they're very quick and easy to make for sure. As a matter of fact, I've probably taken twice as long just explaining it today because I talk so much, right? So, funny enough. Now, I've got this 1-inch stitch. That's the bottom of the casing that the boning will fit in, and it's still raw on the top, right? So I've got that open like that. So the boning's going to fit in there, but the easiest way to make the boning fit is I'm going to sew all the way around, leaving about 1.5 inches left, and then I'm going to slide the boning in and finish it. So I want to start now, let's say over on a corner, because I don't want this bag in my way. So I'm starting over here, and now I'm top stitching, so I'm sewing as close to those upper edges as I possibly can. And I just want to make sure my flap hinge goes in there just right. Take a moment, get yourself organized, and here we go. As soon as we're done with this step, we get to fill the pin cushion, and we are all set. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that out. I'll back stitch over it when I come back to it. Okay, you can see my threads, maybe that'll help you see that opening. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my boning, I'm going to feed it in through that loop, start working it around the bag. Now with the 18 inches, it's going to create a nice little overlap in the back. So it actually is kind of crushable. I have not taken, in my work, the time to actually connect the boning. It just lays in there like that. And that gives you that cool spring loaded, it gives you a lot of body. Once you stitch this area closed, you can go ahead and slide the boning around so that seam ends up in the back if you wanted to. Okay, so let's just finish that last little bit of stitching. And you're not sewing through the boning right now, you're just still doing the top stitching. Sometimes we have to wiggle some of this stuff in under the needle a little bit. And just a reminder, let's start a few, maybe 10 stitches back. So we're locking that in. Now I'm doing a back stitch. And I'm going to come all the way on my top stitch to where that started again. Back stitching. And now we can come through here. I'm going to grab my scissors and do a quick trim and tidy up. We'll catch all those later. But how cool is that, right? Almost as cool. Do you see my new man sewing t-shirts? Yeah, these are the ones you can get online now. I'm super excited about that as well, but not as excited as I am about my little bag. So anyways, once we've got that dialed in, all we still have to do is create yourself a paper funnel. If you need a tutorial on this, I might have to film that one later, but yes, it was a piece of paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to fill this. Now, when I experimented, like I said, I was afraid that stuff was going to be sliding out everywhere. So I actually went ahead and started stitching this area closed so that just the tip of my funnel fit in there. So I'm going to start at the back where the seam allowance is. And this time I'm sewing right over that same thread that was there to begin with. And I'm only going to leave about a 3/4 inch opening. And then here's the other trick. Let's switch feet now so that we're in control once our hands are full. So we're going to put a zipper foot on our machine. Let's see. And now a zipper foot is an interesting little foot. The zipper foot is designed so that the needle goes on one side or the other. So what you want to do is you want to set this up so that you're looking at it like this, because you want all of the foot over here and all the bulk on the other side of your presser foot. Okay, so let me put this foot on real quick. Okay. I think we better trim some of these threads out of the way now. Now, I used for this size bag 1.5 cups of the crushed walnut. The crushed walnut is nice because it actually will do good things for your needle. You could technically add some poly pellets in there if you wanted to. Or if you're just looking for the extra weight, or maybe you're building notions. Like I said, there's some really cool ways you can add on notions holders around here, so you might want some more weight, so you would make your pin cushion larger as well. So I've got a 1/4 inch scoop here. Excuse me, I said 1/4 inch, a 1/4 cup. Apparently I am a quilter by heart, huh? 2, 3. I do not want to make a mess all over the studio here. So I'm at 4 so far. And of course, 6 is what I used to fill the bag almost completely full and give me just enough room to be able to stitch that closed. So you could use a little more if you liked. Now I've got a good solid pinch on that bad boy. I'm bringing it in about halfway back from where I started. I'm going to go all the way to the end. Definitely backstitch this one. Okay, so like I said, it couldn't be any easier than that, but is that great? You've got your trash bag or your tote holder there, you've got your pin cushion, you've got your hinge, you've actually learned some other skills you can apply to bags and whatnot. I think that's super cool. So what I want to know from all of you though, is how you're going to embellish yours. Like I said, my friend Jenny Doan over at Missouri Star Quilt Company, her daughter created this cool pattern and she used like little ball fringe and everything around here. Check this out. Like I told you, I've been using these for years. This is what's hanging out over next to my sewing machine. And you can see I've got some clips on there. I've got a needle that I use for just a couple seconds. I know I tell you to always throw your needles out, but I only use that for a few seconds so it's labeled sharps. Look at that, man trash. There's duct tape in there and twine and fabric and all kinds of stuff. So at any rate, we are so glad you're following us along. We love seeing the comments. We love hearing the feedback. And I want to see, like I said, what you've done creatively with your new pin cushion and trash bag. So until next time, this is Man Sewing.